Welcome to episode 68 of Motivating Mondays, a weekly podcast and YouTube series dedicated to help Canadian job developers and other employer engagement professionals develop the tools, resources, expertise, and network to excel at achieving sustainable employment outcomes for their clients or students. My name is Christian St. Cyr, National Director of the Canadian Job Development Network, and today we're going to acknowledge the whirlwind in the room. The whirlwind is the daily challenge of dealing with an endless list of responsibilities and challenges that impede our ability to effectively engage employers or even adopt best practices in job development. It doesn't need to be this way, but we need to recognize the whirlwind isn't going away either. Every Monday morning, we get together to talk about what's going on in the labor market, research for employers, or new government programming that's going to have an impact on the job market. This said, we're often talking about best practices for job developers. And while the feedback I get on these topics is typically positive, every so often I will meet a job developer who tells me, sure, those practices would be nice, but I have absolutely no time to do anything. I am underwater with administrative tasks, meeting new clients, data entry, and 1,000 other tasks. And sadly, what gets sacrificed is one of the most important roles a job developer, or really anyone who's doing employer engagement, performs, and that is meeting with new employers or following up with existing ones. I'd like to state for the record, I feel your pain. And not in some consultancy way where people say that they understand, but then they follow up by saying, well, you need to do it anyhow. I really do understand. Earlier in my career, I worked as a case manager for an organization which provided employment supports to individuals receiving income assistance. It was a mandated program, so if clients weren't engaged, they would get cut off from income assistance. It is tough work if you've ever done it. I had a caseload of 155 clients, and our service standard was that I had to have meaningful point of contact and engagement with every single client every single week. Based on a 5-day week, I would need to meet with each client for no more than 15 minutes. And that doesn't, of course, factor in paperwork, telephone calls, data entry, meetings, and the occasional staff birthday party. Every day I would come into the work and there were clients waiting in the lobby to meet with me all day long, one right after another. It wasn't so bad. I still got 30 minutes for lunch where I could hyperventilate into a bag. Now, this was case management and not job development. Obviously, we're working with a different set of criteria, but I can certainly and completely understand how we could feel like we are up to our eyeballs in work without any room to incorporate something new. This is why diets often don't work, or exercise routines, or even finding time to send a thank you note for a wedding gift you received 6 months ago. This is the catchword of the 2020s. It is capacity. We don't have any extra capacity. And while I certainly believe that this is true of job developers, I can easily imagine that this is true for case managers, or facilitators, or resource room advisors, or job coaches. I can't imagine what program supervisors and managers are weighed down with on a daily basis. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the job market isn't particularly good right now, which means that our efforts are not producing the same ratio of results. So if this hasn't completely depressed you, what can we take away from this that is valuable? Ask yourself, why do diets or exercise programs often fail? It's because people choose to completely upend their eating and their exercise. The changes aren't necessarily sustainable, and the ever-pressing pressures of life take over, and a person eventually gives up. The same can be said of job development. We don't need to radically change what we're doing. We just need to nudge our efforts in the right direction. The goal is to incorporate small changes that can help further change as time goes by. In the book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, the authors present the whirlwind as this massive amount of urgent day-to-day operational work required to keep an organization running. It consists of emails and phone calls and meetings and putting out fires. And while not necessarily bad, it does consume 100% of our time and energy, making it hard to execute new or strategic goals. The book discusses the important task of identifying the most important goals for an organization or an individual, and then to narrow down the 1, 2, or 3 activities that can be undertaken on a daily basis that would most assist you in achieving those goals. I can't do this book justice in a single editorial, but the question for all of us is to recognize the whirlwind isn't going anywhere. So, what can we do to be productive and achieve our foundational goals? If you need some help with your whirlwind, loop in your colleagues or your boss or perhaps even your funder and say, how do we make sustainable employment outcomes the cornerstone of the work that we do? Case managers may be judged on whether they are able to whether their clients are able to complete action plans. And resource room advisors might be judged on how quickly they're able to respond to client inquiries. Perhaps facilitators are measured on how many people attend their workshops. But job developers are in a unique position that they and their organizations are measured by their employment outcomes. If there are administrative tasks, processes, or even the size of a caseload that is impeding our ability to meet employment outcomes, it hurts the job developer. It hurts the organization, the funder, the employers that we connect with, and even the clients that we support. At the very least, we need to have a conversation about it and ask ourselves, are there small actions that we can incorporate on a daily basis that will move the needle and significantly improve our employment outcomes? If so, how do we incorporate these actions? I often compare job development to sales. But there is one way in which sales and job development are extremely different. Companies recognize and reward salespeople based on their sales. They try to avoid as much as possible adding extra activities that might diminish those outcomes. We need to be just as clear about our employment outcomes. I've watched a few episodes of Undercover Boss, and what I've always been struck by is how surprised the CEO is when they actually get to see what their frontline staff are doing. It generates empathy and decision-making and policy changes, and it creates better organizations overall. We need to have a dialogue about our day-to-day work. Things are not getting any less busy. All we have left is to be thoughtful about how we can be as productive with our time as possible, with our resources and our time and the talent that we have available. There is as much a lesson for each of us as there is for our employers and for the employers that we are reaching out to every single day. We've had fantastic registration for developing a comprehensive approach to effective job development. We're going to be talking about these very topics in that workshop. We've had hundreds of job developers who've taken this training, and you may be registered for this next September's series of workshops, but you might be thinking about it as well. I just want to let you know that everyone who registers by next Thursday, which is August 13th, will benefit from a 20% discount on registration. We have one for every single time zone. On September 21st, it's the Pacific time zone. Mountain on the 22nd, Central on the 23rd, Eastern on the 24th, and the Atlantic time zone is on Friday, September 25th. As I said, everybody who registers by next Thursday, August 13th, is going to benefit from that 20% discount on registration. If you would like more information, go to jobdevelopment.org/pro-D. Or you can just send me an email. My email address is cstcyr@labormarketsolutions.ca. Thank you so much for joining us. These sessions are available on YouTube and most podcast platforms. Just search for Motivating Mondays wherever you download podcasts and subscribe, like, or share. It really does help other job developers or other people in the career development sector find out about these sessions. And as I said, we do these sessions live and for free every Monday morning on Microsoft Teams. We have job developers joining us from all across Canada. It'd be so great if you could join us. If you want more information, just go to jobdevelopment.org to learn more. And if you want to talk, just connect with me by email. My email address is cstcyr@labormarketsolutions.ca. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have an amazing week.